Joel Leonard here for another edition of Skill TV. I'm fortunate to have the opportunity to meet with Benjamin Briggs. Are you the president or executive director?
Executive director.
Executive director of Preservation Greensboro. And I've known Benjamin for a while and been involved in some projects with him, and he's quite a knowledgeable resource and very passionate about sustaining some of the old historical perspectives of things, and also embracing some of the newer technologies and newer approaches too. So that's an interesting balance, and I know it's very difficult to do that, Benjamin. So share with us some of your concerns and some of the things that you have to deal with and grapple with on a day-to-day basis.
Well, historic preservation is not so much about retaining the past, but it's looking towards the future. It's crafting how our future will look, and whether or not we will have elements of our history with us for future generations to enjoy and engage with. So if you could imagine world-famous cities such as London and Paris and Tokyo without any historic buildings and without their character and without the craftsmanship that makes those places special, you can sort of get an idea of what we're trying to save. And here in the United States, we've got our own historic cities, and every city really has its own fingerprint. What makes it special, whether it's adobe buildings down in the southwestern United States, whether it's wood frame buildings up in New England, or whether it's brick buildings here in the South. Every city has its own unique character and craftsmanship. And the challenge is keeping each place looking as it needs to look and as it's historically looked. We don't want every place to look the same. You don't want to get in a
generic America.
Yeah, you don't want to jump on a plane in Seattle and fly for 6 hours and land in Washington, D.C. and it looks the same and you eat in the same restaurants. It does get to be generic. So our challenge is how do you keep each place special and unique and retain those differences.
And what's interesting is, our focus here on Skill TV is how do we develop the skill sets that will sustain us in the future, and continuing the continuity of the past. That's what you deal with on a day-to-day basis. When we lose the craftsmen of the past, we got all these artifacts of what they built, but we don't have any idea of what the thought processes, design, and the skill sets it was to create it. And then you have to go back and renovate it, to go back and upgrade it, and you may be destroying more as you're trying to fix it.
Right. I mean, there's lots of different angles to look at this. One is that every region has its own unique fingerprint as far as the skill sets that are needed. If someone was skilled in adobe craftsmanship here in North Carolina, they wouldn't get much business. Likewise, if someone was working with brick frame on the West Coast, it would be a much different market than restoration of brick materials here in the Southeast. So every area has its different skill sets and its needs. And there is also a respect to the materials. So you don't want to do the wrong thing to the wrong material. You don't want to sandblast brick, for example. You destroy the integrity of the brick when it's sandblasted. And a lot of people think that's a good way to clean brick. But in reality, you're actually destroying the building. You're removing the crust off the brick, the historic brick, and the brick will literally dissolve. So we've got to have people who understand the skill sets that are involved in restoring historic buildings properly so that they do it right, so that they're preserved.
And then having respect for those kind of skill sets and for propagating them forward.
Of course.
Well, I greatly appreciate your time here, and it's a little chilly out here, so any other final remarks you'd like to make and share with our audience?
No, I think it's just being aware. I think is everything that you talk about, that there are certain skill sets that are needed. There are markets for this. I think you need to be smart about what you invest your time in and do the right thing, because it needs to be done. People need to develop an understanding of how materials work and how machinery works and how it all ties together. And if you mess it up, you do a lot more harm than you do good. So you got to do the right thing. Be smart about it.
Well, thank you.
Sure, not a problem.
Well, that's another edition of Skill TV. Oh, by the way, I want to mention, Benjamin and I were involved, and I want you to share with them this radical renovation. Tell them what we did.
Well, there was a building in downtown Greensboro that had not really had much work done to the exterior in about 40 or 50 years. And we were able to put together a small volunteer group of contractors and artists and preservation citizens in the community to organize and orchestrate a renewal of the exterior of the building. Parts of the exterior of the building had been removed and had been lost. So we've got some architects, and we recreated what that building looked like. And it's 2005 when that project was done, so we did have to incorporate some new materials too that respected the materials of the past. So what we ended up with was a building in downtown Greensboro that's historic, that's restored, and that people look at and they admire. It's unique to the city of Greensboro. It adds to the vitality of the streetscape, and I think it turned out to be a win for the property owners, a win for the downtown community, and a win for historic preservation and craftsmanship.
Yeah, what was interesting about that was, and you'd said this, is that people would walk by and they didn't even know this building in the past, and it would just be another building. And then after we got involved, you had these open communities, charades, how do you say charades?
The charrettes.
Charrettes. You have these charrettes, you have these open discussions, you have architects, you have construction people, you have community leaders, you have all these different people in the same room talking about what this thing could be. And the owners opened it up to allow people to have their input. And then you said people literally would walk up, whether they had any involvement with it or somewhat involvement with it, they felt connected to that. And that made this community more involved and more supportive of those buildings. And I think that's a part of the problem why we have kids that are facing a lot of our infrastructure and our things, because of graffiti and issues, because they don't feel connected. And I think that involvement helped overcome some of it.
I think if people understand the story behind place, they become more engaged with it and feel more stewardship of it.
And take more ownership. Well, thank you. That's a definite message we want to share on Skill TV, and hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you.
No, sure, not a problem.